What's up, everybody? It's Dante, aka the Forensics Guy, and you are listening to the Forensics Experience, the podcast where we discuss topics in the speech and debate community with the world's most influential coaches, students, and alumni in the activity. And today, this is a great day, especially because oh my gosh, I've been doing so many episodes. This is crazy. Like I try to do all my bulk episodes. This is just crazy. But even more than that, I'm sitting with Blake Longfellow. And if you don't know Blake Longfellow, this is a great chance to get to know him because he is amazing. He is killing it right now in the speech and debate community. I'm super excited to tell you everything about him, but y'all know I don't do it like that. I allow my person on my podcast to tell you all what it is about them and what they do in the speech and debate community. So, welcome, Blake. Feel free to let our audience know who you are and exactly what do you do in the speech and debate community.
Thanks, Dante. I really appreciate you having me on. I am currently Director of Speech at Concordia University, Irvine. That's a college team in Southern California. The last 6 years, I worked as Assistant Director and as Director of Forensics at Diablo Valley College in Northern California. But you and I met through Hired Judge, and that's become an increasingly bigger part of my work and my identity. And Hired Judge connects judges with speech and debate coaches, tournament directors, parents. And now we do all academic competitions, not just speech and debate. So also theater festivals, scholarship writing contests, science fair competitions, all kinds of stuff. So Hired Judge is kind of my primary gig. And that's how you and I got connected. And that's how I ended up here today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Obviously, Hired Judge is a great service. I've used it and have had great things happen from it. No quarrels. No. Yeah, qualms. I was thinking quarrels, and I was like, no,
Quarrels
that's not
works
right.
too.
Yeah, we haven't had a quarrel yet, so this is good. But yeah, I love all of the things you are doing in the community. But I want to take it back. Probably, I don't know how many years. I mean, you don't look a day over 21, so we'll say at least 10 years ago. Tell us about your experience in speech and debate. So, like, when did you get started, and what events did you do?
Well, I appreciate that. I did just turn 35, but I got started in high school. I was in theater. I was a theater kid all through middle school and high school. I had a theater teacher who just moved from Texas to California and had us start doing duo because I think the theater and speech and debate teams are a little bit more intertwined in Texas. And so he tried to establish that at our school. And so started doing duo, did that sophomore, junior, senior year, even qualified for CHSAA, the California State Championship, but couldn't go because we had a theater competition. So did speech and debate in high school, but my primary focus was on theater. And then when it was time for college, realized, they're giving more scholarships and trophies away over in speech and debate. And so I made the transition to do speech and debate full time. That's when I came down to Southern California. I went to Orange Coast College, community college in Southern California. That's one of the most successful, if not the most successful community college program in the country for speech and debate. In fact, they won the national championship for community colleges again this year. Competed there for 2 years, had a good run. We won a team championship. I won top speaker, won a couple individual championships, which then helped me get a scholarship to go to Bradley University in Illinois, which is historically the most accomplished speech program in the country. While I was at Bradley, had some more team success, won 2 team championships and the 2011 Informative Speaking National Championship at NFA, which then opened up some opportunities to go to Western Kentucky for grad school. So I coached at Western Kentucky, went to grad school there. And after that was kind of burnt out on the speech and debate thing because I'd done it at a pretty high level for a long time. Yeah. So I stepped away, had an opportunity to become co-owner of my childhood summer camp. It was a performing arts summer camp. And so I ran that for 5 years as co-owner. Wow. But during that time, started dipping my toe back into forensics. I'd reached out to my old high school and said, hey, I'd be happy to come by and help. And kind of took a paid assistant coaching job there. Same thing, reached out to a local community college and said, hey, I live in the area. I'd be happy to help out. They convinced me to take a paid assistant coaching job there, which then just kind of set me back on this path to get back into forensics and into teaching, and eventually fully committed to that. And that's also when the idea for Hired Judge came around, was when I was coaching at the local high school and watching high school coaches and parents and tournament directors struggle with finding judges. Always, every coach I've ever met struggles to find judges at some point. And that's kind of when that idea came to fruition, because I realized, okay, here's all these people that would love to hire someone to judge for them, but they can't find them. I know hundreds of college kids that would love to judge for them, but don't know how to find those coaches. And those two parties are probably never going to find each other. And so created the service mainly just for my friends that were coaches and kind of for a local thing to begin with, of how to put these two parties together, and then spun off into a bunch of other things I never really imagined.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially, I mean, as speech and debate grows, I think there's definitely a really great need for something like Higher Judge. Just anything necessarily that's going to be able to put those two things together. And I know that you mentioned, yeah, there's so many people looking for judge opportunities. Even a tournament that I ran not too long ago, there was a lot of people emailing me like, "Hey, I could judge for you," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is like, man, let me organize this, let me figure this out." But having something, I feel like Higher Judge definitely helps out for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main value propositions too, is that other people may have systems in place to find judges, or they can, go through Tabroom and through their email. People, when you're hosting a tournament nowadays, you'll get all these emails from people that find your tournament on Tabroom or wherever that want to judge your tournament. But it's all really confusing, and you don't know who these people are. You don't know who's going to be reliable. You don't know who you can trust. And I think that's one of the niches that Higher Judge serves, is that we collect data on each of these judges. We track them over time. And so it's not just you, the tournament director, hiring them once a year and hoping that things go well, but I can hire them 10, 15, 20 times a year and figure out who are actual reliable quality judges and who are people that don't, that are misrepresenting their actual experience as judges. So it's been a big puzzle and a big headache to figure out, but figuring it out. And I think that makes the job of the coach and the tournament director much easier, right? Because that takes that work off of them, centralizes it to one company or one organization, rather than each coach and tournament director having to individually figure those things out for themselves,
Yeah, that's true. And I will say that one thing that I think a lot of people, like obviously, we're in the speech and debate community. There's always disagreements and agreements and things like that. And I feel like there's two sides. There are people who don't like the idea of Higher Judge, and they're well within their right to have that that feeling. But I will say, for those people, if you're listening, if you do, if somebody's listening right now that's like, Higher Judge, not my thing. But I will say that I think one thing that I like is that the idea of Higher Judge keeps people who are interested in the speech and debate community, like doing things like work and having actual consistent work. I feel like, a lot of seasons, for example, Wisconsin, our season is pretty short compared to a lot of other seasons, especially because speech and debate don't run congruently. Like, they're literally two separate seasons. So like, if you're only interested in the speech side and judging, like, you only have a couple of months to judge. Whereas if you were interested and you were doing something like Higher Judge, you could be judging consistently from September to like June and do it probably every week. And that's awesome to have that opportunity to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, obviously being able to create an income opportunity for people all year round. You mentioned a lot of regions do like a seasonal thing. I think Minnesota does something similar. I think that's obviously great. And then creating opportunities for people during the summer. And there's other opportunities that these judges now get to work outside the speech and debate world too. Like, we have a contract with Lenovo and Motorola, where they run a scholarship contest. And they came to me and said, "Hey, we have this scholarship opportunity that we created. We get 2,000 applicants, and we don't really have any like system for evaluating all these scholarship applicants." And so I take those scholarship applicants and run it through an asynchronous tournament, basically, where judges will judge 3 rounds where they evaluate 10 scholarships, rank them 1st through 10 like a speech round. And then I come back to Lenovo Motorola and say, "Here's your top 10 applicants." And they decide. And so I just bring that up to say it's created more opportunity for those same judges to work even beyond speech and debate.
Yeah.
And then also you mentioned, there's some detractors of Higher Judge. I totally understand their concerns of adding a middleman in this transaction between judges and coaches and tournament directors. And I think that's fair. And if there's a simple way for them to not use Higher Judge, then they shouldn't. But what I remind myself is that every single week from September through June, there is a parent or a student or a tournament director or a coach who calls me or emails me panicked on Thursday night because if they don't find a judge in the next 24 hours, they're going to be dropped or they don't get to compete.
Yeah.
And every one of those times I can find them a judge, right?
Yeah.
And if not, I'm going to do everything in my power to find them a judge. And then now we even offer travel judges where I can fly someone in from across the country to come judge for you if you need. So,
Wow.
I think that there's a niche that's not being served by the existing infrastructure, and that alone is kind of justification for the company to exist. I think more forensics happens because hired judge exists. Those people don't have to drop out of the tournament. But the alternative is even if the tournament says, okay, we're going to let you enter the tournament, you can hire from us. Well, now that tournament director has to do more work, right? Now they have to go find those judges. And that's already the person that's doing the most work at the tournament, having to do more work
Yeah.
because the kind of existing infrastructure couldn't solve that problem for them. So that's how I rationalize it, knowing that I think more forensics happens because because hired judges exists and has allowed more students to actually compete, whereas they wouldn't have been able to find a judge otherwise.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate that. That's a great insight. So I'm interested in also just learning a little bit about your past. As I said, we were going back. So what was your main event that you did when you competed? And yeah, that's my first question. What was your main event that you did when competing?
Yeah, so I mentioned I came from theater. So when I entered competing in speech and debate, I thought of myself as an interpreter, and I had some success in interp. Won a community college gold medal in POI, but I had the most success in platform events.
Okay.
I did all 11 college speech events at some point throughout my career, but had the most success in platform events. Primarily mentioned I was the 2011 national champion in informative speaking.
Yeah.
But I would consider after dinner speaking or speech to entertain to be my main event.
Okay.
Which would be similar to like an OO in high school.
Yeah. I was good. If you wouldn't have said that, I would have gave that to the audience of like, yes, ADS is like OO basically. Like an OO and an HI. You know, it's very interesting. But I love the event. I love that so many different events have so many different names too. It's just really interesting. Like at least in Wisconsin, like DI and HI is called solo humorous and solo serious. So like, I mean, obviously I feel like that makes a little bit more sense, but I like the difference in names. My next question is, do you have, well, okay, so let me just make sure I'm right. So like when you were competing, you mainly competed in college, right? Like you only did the theater stuff in high school?
Did theater and then dabbled in duo in high school.
Okay, and then dabbled in duo. Okay. So I like this question then. So are there any events that you regret not doing when you were in high school? What is something that you wish, or I guess it could have been any point in your career, but is there anything that you never got to compete in that you really wish you would have?
Yeah, I wish I had tried a little bit more debate. I mentioned I did all 11 events because I wanted to be really well-rounded. I wanted to try them all. And for some reason for me, that stopped at debate. But looking back on it now, I wish it hadn't, right? I wish I had dabbled a little bit in parliamentary debate, or today we have IPDA, I think would have been a good event for me. Because, I was an econ major originally and follow politics and a lot of the things that are prerequisites to be successful in debate, I feel like I was already doing, especially for extemp or for other events. I just never really competed in it. And so I wish I'd done a little bit more debate.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Okay, next question. So, basically, hold on. I'm just like, okay. So, when it comes to your career, I always figure out a good way to say this. So, like, what is the thing that you think was most? What is the thing that you believe you learned the most in your speech and debate career that is helping you right now? Like as you are doing all of the things you're doing within the community and other work?
That's a good question. I'd say remembering to not sweat the little mistakes, right? that I think most judges will let small mistakes go. It's when you let a small mistake become a bigger mistake that it becomes something that's held against you, right? Tripping over a syllable or having to repeat a word because it like didn't come out right. That's not something that I think actually changes your final rank. Even in big final rounds, right? I mentioned in the 2011 national final round for informative, I had 3 flubs in the national final, and I sat down and thought for sure I had lost, and then obviously didn't. And I think that's one of the practices that I teach my students is don't let small mistakes become bigger mistakes, right? And to practice the art of messing up. That I think when students are practicing, they have this tendency to be working through the speech, hit some sort of a memory flub or some sort of mistake, and then start the whole speech over, when really they should be learning how to push through that and how to recover from making those small mistakes, because that's actually the skill that's going to be most important and is going to help you in whatever you do, right? Not letting these small things kind of become outsized in our mind that becomes a bigger issue.
Nice. That's a great answer. I appreciate that. All right, we're getting into the juicy stuff, and I'm sure some people want to know. This is a question that so many people have, and we need to figure this out. And I think there's no better person that can answer this question than you. And you are literally you're the end all be all of this. Like if your answer's not right, I don't think the community can ever trust you again. Okay. So we need to know, what are we going to do? This is kind of a 2-part question. What are we going to do with bad judges? And how do you, because you're the owner of Hire Judge, how do you stop bad judges? Do you every kid, there's not a kid in this world that hasn't had a good job, amazing performance, and a 6. And that was it. And there was nothing. Ballot. I've even had empty ballots. Yeah. How do you prevent that as Hire Judge, and how are you making sure that the judges that you have are quality judges and staying up on them?
Yeah, so internally with Hire Judge, we have something called a judge score, where every time a judge completes a tournament and there were no missed ballots, no issues with the tab staff or anything like that, their score goes up. Every time that they flake out at the last minute before the tournament, or I hear back that they missed a ballot, their score goes down. Cool. And so that's how I handle judge assignments, that I'll send it out to my judges, see who's available, and the judges with the top scores get picked for as many as I need, right? And so that's kind of how I internally handle it. There's other things that go into that score, like their experience, their kind of profile comes to me and I'm able to read it and assign an initial score. And that's kind of where they start based on, okay, this person has 12 years experience. They shouldn't start at 0.
Yeah.
Right? Just because this is their first time starting with Hire Judge, they'll start at a higher level and then kind of go from there. And then I guess this is a good time to mention Professional Speech and Debate Association is kind of my tournament hosting company that I started in addition to Hire Judge. And one of the main reasons for that company to exist is just so I can test out judges myself before I'm assigning them to people like you. So I can assign them online to my own tournaments and have the full data of what their ballots look like. And I go in and I see, okay, they hit the word count minimum, but didn't write anything else. And all of their comments were just kind of general, vague nothingness. And they didn't really have specific comments to the performance. That's going to result in a lower initial judge score than someone who comes in, writes full pages, never misses a ballot, and was lovely to work with through the whole tournament experience too. Because that's also important. Not just did you write a good ballot, but were you okay to work with, right? Does the tournament enjoy working with you? Because I have tons of judges who come in and say, I have 15 years of policy debate experience, and I've been judging for 12 years after that, and blah, 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 and all this experience. And then the tournament comes back and say, hey, that person's kind of a jerk, right? That person like came to the tab room and cussed out my tab staff because we were running behind schedule, And so that's all part of it too, is not just your actual ballots and your reliability, but also professionalism. Do you handle yourself like a professional at the tournament and treat this like a job? I think that's part of the issue, is that for so long, these people were competitors and students, and they didn't view it as a job. And so when they become a judge, they still think of it kind of like as playtime, hanging out with their friends at the tournament. It doesn't feel like a job yet. And so that's also where I think Hire Judge adds some value, because we're not just hiring people one time a year when we host a tournament or 4 times a year when they go with us to a tournament. but I hire someone 20 times a year, 30 times a
Yeah.
year, and kind of get a good idea over time of who these people are. So that's kind of my selfish answer of how do we solve judge issues.
Yeah.
Um, and the last thing I'll say on that is I do operate on a 2-strike system instead of 3
Mhm.
strikes. That when I get missed ballots, I understand things happen, especially online tournaments where you weren't looking at your email for that exact minute when the ballots came through and all that.
Yeah.
So missed ballots don't necessarily get you a strike unless it happens repeatedly. But like no shows or behavioral issues or professionalism issues are a 2-strike system. And I do have a blacklist of judges that I'll never hire again. And that when friends and family, or not friends and family, but when tournament directors that are friends of mine reach out and say, hey, I was thinking about hiring this person. Do you hire them? Do you know anything about them? I'll kind of privately tell them, actually, they're on my blacklist. That's not someone I would hire again. And so that's kind of how I do it. Within Hire Judge. What should the community do about it? Probably use Hire Judge, but that's my selfish answer. I think Tabroom's done a lot of great work of adding features for helping people be able to see judges past judging history and to read their paradigms. And I think a lot of coaches have kind of built their own systems. I think adding like the word count minimums to ballots is a good start. That should be a standard practice for all tournament directors to turn that feature on and say no ballot can be submitted without 200 words, 400 words, whatever the amount is.
Mm.
I think we can solve a lot of it with the technology itself, but even in my experience, so much of it's been trial and error, right? Where these judges come to me and I'll assign them and hope that things go well, and sometimes they don't. And it's that's just something that we got to learn through trial and error and figure out who is a good judge, and then figure out how to elevate those judges so they're the ones working the most often, and then slowly weed out the other ones. But I guess that's kind of the other part of the answer that I want to emphasize is it's not just about weeding out the bad judges. We also need to figure out mechanisms for elevating the good judges, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think my system does, is rewarding the people with the highest judge scores. But I think there's probably a way we could do that within Tabroom or these other tournament hosting softwares like Speechwire or ForensicsTournament.net, where because I've hosted these tournaments where people come to you that aren't in Hire Judge, they just start applying from Tabroom or from the internet from all over the world saying they want to judge your tournament, and you have no idea to know who's a good judge and who isn't. So I think we need to figure out some sort of technology answer for that.
Absolutely. I think this was an amazing answer. I don't know if my listeners agree, but I thought it was great. So feel free to let me know in the comments if you thought it wasn't, and let me know how that answer could be improved. So I want to ask though, I wrote it down in the middle of you talking, so I'm really curious about one thing, and that is, I feel that a lot of judges right now, like, they're probably hearing this conversation and they're like, this is tough. Like, judging is really tough. Like, even for myself, and I've been judging and coaching and participating for probably close to 2 decades now, and it can be very tough to take the only like basically 8 minutes of somebody doing their DI and write an entire like good feedback for them, and the hardest thing is like some judges, every judge does it differently. Obviously, some judges are like, well, I just won't write any comments right now, I'll do it after, because usually you can submit it after, stuff like that. I usually try to do mine only in the time frame of them acting specifically, because I feel like I'm going to forget stuff at the end and I don't want to do that. Yep. What advice do you have for somebody who is like, this is actually really difficult and I want to get better at judging? How can I?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I just got back from NSDA Nationals, where I don't think I wrote great ballots, right? I was judging an event that's not really in my wheelhouse, extemporaneous debate in public forum, 2 events that I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And, tried to give as helpful a feedback as I could, but like, I don't know all the jargon and the terminology to tell these students exactly where these arguments are clashing and how they get weighed against each other and all that. And so it's hard, right? Judging is hard. And, I explained to my students that the judges just want to get it right. And we want a student to come up and give us a reason to give them first place as like the easy answer, right? That's also why making big mistakes, you give a judge an easy answer of why you're sixth. And so from a competitor standpoint, it's about minimizing reasons for a six and maximizing reasons for a one.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make the judge's job easy and just hold their hand through it. So as far as a judge, I think the question was mainly around where do they get started and how do they get better?
Yeah.
There are a ton of great YouTube judging tutorials. There's a million of them on YouTube. Just judge how to judge public forum, how to judge congressional debate, and you'll find dozens of them for every event. So there's a lot of good stuff there. I am in the process for Hire Judge of creating like a certification process, because I have a lot of judges who come to me and say, hey, I did Lincoln Douglas. I've never judged or seen public forum, but I bet I could figure it out if I was able to like practice a little bit. So I am building out curriculum, but at the end of the day, so much of it's just about you need reps, even as a judge, not just as a competitor. You need reps of watching rounds, figuring things out, and learning from it. So, I think a lot of judges are doing the right thing of getting out there and sending emails to every online tournament, trying to get as many online reps as they can. I think that's that's also part of the issue right now. And we can get into this a little bit, that, most things went back in person this year. California was a little bit behind the rest of the country in getting back in person. I think most of the rest of the country was back a year before, but so many things went back in person this year. And I'm having a hard time finding in-person judges. I got 2,200 judges worldwide that I can use for online tournaments, and I can fill orders of 300, 400, 500 judges a weekend for online tournaments. But in person, in California, where I have the most judges, it's hard to find 5 or 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pre-pandemic, I was filling orders of 30 judges for in-person judges in California, and had like a quarter of the judges that I have now. And so I bring that up to say that I think if you're like a really capable, reliable, respected judge, you've been able to figure out how to stay online. And how to continue judging online. And those people aren't going to in-person unless it's worth a lot more for their time. That's why next year we're moving our pay for in-person judging up from $125 to $150. Going to pay $150 for in-person judging. Keeping online judging at $100 a day. So now it's going to be 50% more to go in person. So my point is, if you want more reps, but you're not getting assigned these online tournaments, it's because if you want to judge online, you're competing with the whole globe, right?
Yeah.
I got people in Nigeria and Cambodia trying to judge this tournament. But if you want to go in person, there isn't an in-person tournament in the country that would love to have you every weekend. And so if you want more reps, go back to in-person. Even if the end goal is then to be able to eke out a living judging online. But right now, there's too many people trying to judge these very few opportunities to judge online, and not enough people trying to judge the in-person opportunities. So I kind of meandered from your question there.
No, this is great. I like this because I want, obviously want, real conversations like this. And I think that you brought up so many things in my head about like, all right, what are because I'm like, as people know me, like I live for the idea that I want to create a speech and debate world that's like accessible, inclusive, diverse, and equitable. And I think one of the hardest things to truly map out is accessibility, especially in a country like ours where like there's cost of living differences and things of that nature that make things really tough. And like and don't get me wrong, I 100% personally for you, I think what you're doing, increasing that cost is great. But I also think, like, and I'm just only speaking for myself, as someone who lives in the Bay Area, like, I don't think, unless it was like a Friday night type of tournament where I knew it wouldn't take the entire day, I can't imagine getting up and going to an all-day Saturday tournament for 150. Like, and that's I know it's going to be, it's probably great for me, maybe somebody who's in college and stuff like that, potentially depending on the money they need, but I can't imagine doing that, especially with the amount of time I've dedicated towards speech and debate. And I know that makes it hard probably for you because you're like, well, I can't charge a school $400 and then give you $250 of that, which sounds better. But I don't know where to meet in the middle here. I think for most judges, and I know that can be difficult for you to find judges. I really hope you obviously do. And I know that there are definitely judges that will judge for that amount. I just think that's gonna be tough. And I don't know. I obviously like I don't work for hire judge, so I don't know a way to like answer that better than you might be able to.
No, it is a big puzzle trying to figure it out. And, I made the decision very early on that it was going to be standard pay
Yeah.
across the country. Like, this is what the time and energy for a judge, whether you're in California or Nebraska, this is what it's worth, right?
Mhm.
And I think at times that pay is too low for California, but the cost is too high for Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
I haven't had a single judge order from Nebraska. So, uh, right, there's a disconnect there between these different regions for what the judges are willing to work for versus what the teams can afford to pay.
Yeah.
And while I have, some clients saying that I should charge much more, especially if it would ensure that they're going to be able to find judges, I've made the decision to try and move up slowly. But even then, like, we're talking about a 50%. So
Yeah.
in 2019, 2020, before the pandemic, I was paying in-person judges $100 a day and was filling orders of 30, 40 in-person judges, right?
Yeah.
And then now we're at 125, and I could barely find 5 to 10 judges for in-person tournaments, if at all. And then
Yeah.
I'm going up to 150, but that's a 50% inflation for the cost of an in-person judge in
True.
just 4 years, 3.5 years. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying not to overcorrect, but I
Yeah.
agree. In some regions, like New York, LA, San Francisco, $150 to sit in traffic for an hour and a half on your way to the tournament, and then sit in a room all day with not
Yeah.
great Wi-Fi, and then get home at 10 p.m. at night after sitting another hour and a half in traffic home isn't really worth it. I agree.
Yeah.
But trying to move incrementally and not overcorrect and figure out where that market's at.
Yeah, no, I think obviously you have all the data behind you, the research, and you're going to definitely figure this out. I'm interested. I guess. Well, so I can only speak on stuff that I'm really familiar with, right? So, like, when I judged in Wisconsin, when I was well, it was I had different jobs that did different things. When I coached at middle school, when I was director at Lake Country, I didn't get paid for judging, but I also usually didn't judge. I don't judge like anymore, like pretty much at all now. I'm mainly just like that chaperone. But like when I was at Brookfield East, when I judged, we got like $75 for a day, which was low, but at the same time it was like, okay, well I guess this is in addition to my stipend, so I'll take that. But like then eventually when I started hearing like MPS was giving you 125, I was like, oh no, I'm over there. I was like, I guess I just won't judge for the school that I work at anymore. Because I was like, this is significantly better. And that's I don't I'm not exactly sure. Like that was like 2015. I don't know if the number has went up significantly. I'd have to ask somebody like Ernest or something, but it would be interesting to know, like, oh, are they paying significantly more now? How's the cost of living change? Stuff like that. And just figuring those things out. Also, I'm interested in knowing, because I know it's very common for places to do like a day thing. Have you ever considered like a round type of pay? Like and I know that's tough too, because like I feel like, this is a hard question. Like I'm sitting and I'm trying to workshop this right now in my mind as I'm talking on the podcast, because in my mind I'm like, oh, maybe hourly would work better and just say like $25 or $30 an hour or something. But then like I would be really mad if I went to a debate tournament and because I was prefed low, I only judged one round and I sat there for 10 hours. And if I only judged one round, now I got $30. Like that's not good. So I don't know.
No, I agree, and I appreciate you asking, because I think about these things all the time, and all my friends and family are tired of hearing about it, and so glad to have someone to chat about this with. But obviously, considered a per round model, but stayed away from it for the exact reason that you mentioned, which is that at the end of the day, especially with in-person tournaments, that person is there working whether they're judging or not. Right? They're at a tournament, they're not at the gym or with their family or going out to lunch with friends. Right? They're at a tournament, they're working. And especially for the exact scenario you already described, if you pay a judge per round, well, now the tournament director's incentive structure is to use that judge as little as possible and to maximize the number of times they use the judge who's not getting paid, right? The parent who's donating free labor, or the coach is donating free labor, or that labor is being paid for by their school. But when the tournament director is paying a judge per round, now they're incentivized to only give them rounds when they absolutely have to, and to extract as much value from the paid or unpaid labor of these other judges, right? And so I just think that the kind of perverse incentives, and so decided to do a day rate that I think kind of aligns those incentives more, because now the judges' incentive structure, so that's kind of the other thing, that when you do a per round model, in theory, it incentivizes judges to like be there ready to pick up a ballot and to like be active and eager in judging, right? And to try and get as many rounds as they can. Whereas if you pay a judge per day, now their incentive structure is to like kind of hang in the back, hope that this ballot gets picked up by someone else. I'm making the same whether I judge or not. And that's where I think things are different for hired judge versus a tournament or a coach. Because with hired judge, they still have an incentive to do a great job because they're trying to get hired next weekend and the weekend after and the weekend after. And if I get feedback from the tournament director that says like, yeah, this judge was here, I guess, but I could never find him when I needed him. Well, that's going to lower their judge score. They're not going to get assigned next weekend. And so, I just think a lot about incentive structures, and obviously the way that we pay our judges is all a part of that. I do think per round would solve some issues with being able to use hired judge in regions where like the day rate cost is prohibitive. But it also, I like one of my kind of core beliefs about the activity is that we have been lucky enough to thrive on unpaid labor, but I think that era has come to an end, right?
Absolutely.
That I think that's one of the key reasons that we have so much burnout of coaches, is because the coaches who are already doing the most, running big teams and going to every major tournament, then get asked to do more unpaid labor by serving on the board and trying to pick up lobbying efforts with Congress and with their state government. And they have to go and advocate with their principal and all this stuff, right? That we ask the people already doing the most to do more. And we've kind of thrived off of using unpaid labor. That would be parents, coaches, alumni. But the pandemic forced us into a little bit of a reckoning. Like all of a sudden we have this generation of alumni that only did online forensics and are less identified with their program. They don't have that same connection to the team that the student that did 4 years of in-person does, right? And so they're less likely to come back and donate their time and their energy. So I think we're kind of going through that. And I think that's probably for the best in the long run. It's creating some headaches right now. But I think in the long run, making sure that people are paid for the time and the work that they do is a good practice, right? So that's like, again, some of the, I have to laugh at some of the critiques of hired judge of like, oh, you're charging too much, but also judges should make more money, but also we don't want to pay more money for our judges. I feel like it's a disconnect between what they're saying and what they say they want. And
I guess just to stop you, just to answer that, because I'm pretty sure somebody's listening and like, you can't just say that without telling me what it is. So like, what's the structure? Like, how much do you charge the school? How much does hired judge get? And then how much do those coaches get or judges get?
Yeah. So last season for online tournaments, I charged $130 and I paid a judge $100. For in person, I charged $160 and I paid a judge $125. This next season, that number is going up to charging $195 but paying a judge $150.
Okay,
and that's because the costs have all kind of escalated over time, and I need to hire more staff. I need to hire more accounting and marketing and all this stuff, right? So costs are going up. But I just think it's kind of a disconnect between saying that I'm charging too much for judges, but also that we think judges should make more, but no one wants to pay that. And, that doesn't really work out.
I think I would say from their perspective, most likely, I understand the perspective, because I do think, it's tough because like, no matter what, like we need to be, I guess, we live in this capitalist society. We need money. Like that's just how things have to work. Like you can't just expect things for free. However, I do think that there are interesting ways where that might be different in the eyes of, or different ways in order to make money. So I guess this would be a question then. I don't know. Have you ever? I mean, it would be you. You obviously can't just turn the wheels 180 right now and do something completely different. But in the past, have you ever thought of like, would this structure work better? Like, for example, like, what if this was just a website that was, like a curated, almost like Excel list of judges to contact and stuff like that, and then people knew where to go to find those judges, and then you made money through ads or something, or you made money through those things. Like I'm just curious. Like I'm pretty sure somebody might be thinking it, so I want to ask. So have you ever thought of other routes of revenue making that could work as well?
Well, the NSDA did that, right? The NSDA released the judge board, which I think is a great resource and was a great move for the NSDA to provide that.
Yeah.
I still think they're two different things, what they do with the judge board and what I do, right? With the judge board, first off, now you're not prioritizing the best judges and hiding the worst judges. You're prioritizing the judges whose name starts with A. Right?
Fair. Yeah.
Like that's who the people hiring are going to see the most, is alphabetically the people whose names come first.
Yeah.
But still requires a coach to contact that person, to vet that person, to agree on what the compensation should be, to request a W-9 from them, to submit that W-9 to their school. Then the judge has to also negotiate that rate, has to try and have like a bidding war between different coaches trying to hire them to try and maximize their value. They then have to fill out a different W-9 for each school that they work for every single weekend. They then have to wait 2 months for that school district to pay them, because we all know school districts take forever. Whereas with my service, the coach can come and say, hey, I need a judge. And they submit an order. And then they get back to coaching their students. They don't have to think about any of that ever again. They can hire 30 judges from me and submit one W-9 to their school.
True.
And the school usually prefers that. The school doesn't want to do 30 W-9s for independent contractors. They want to work with one company. And so I think we add value there by taking that work off of the coach. Now that coach isn't sitting at their computer ignoring their students because they have to find a judge, they're back to doing the thing that they're actually paid to do.
True.
Nowhere in their job description did it say vet potential judges and negotiate compensation with judges, right?
Yeah.
And so taking that work off of coaches into a centralized company that can do it much faster and more efficiently and better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that adds value for judges because they sign up with me one time. I'll find them judging opportunities, come to them, show them the opportunities, and then they submit one W-9 with me, and then they get paid the week after. They don't have to wait for the school district to pay them. I'll take on that burden of waiting for the school district, which, I made the joke about 2 months, but I'm waiting for a check right now from 7 months ago from a school district.
That's crazy.
It's almost July. And this tournament was in December, right? So it's just crazy. And that burden would fall on a judge, whereas now it's on my company. And I think that's better for both parties. So, I think there's other resources. I think the judge board is great. I think the ability for judges to offer rounds on Tabroom is a great feature. But all of those are still active solutions that require input week to week from both judges and coaches, whereas I think hired judges are a more passive solution that it allows both parties to do what they do best and not have to invest time and energy just in finding and coordinating work opportunities. And then they can just accept the judging opportunities when I send them to them. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah.
Definite. No, that's a great answer, and I appreciate that answer. This is a time for me to take a quick break and let y'all know that this show is sponsored by my new company I just started. It's called Hired Fudge. I actually have people judge cake and decorating competitions with candy and stuff like that. So if you're interested, sign up at hiredfudge.com. All right.
Very
cool.
good.
Well, hopefully there's a real Hired Fudge and they pay me because I did use their name. So, all right. So cool. I want to thank you so much for being on. As most people know by now, I have my separate section, which you don't get to hear, unfortunately, unless you are a supporter of the podcast. But for those who are supporters of the podcast, I thank you so much for being able to help me find, guests every day and every week and interview them and use my time and try to make this, thing that I can make happen for the speech and debate community. So for those who haven't supported, I hope you do. And this part of the episode is about to end. So I want to say quickly, for those who are listening and they're like, oh my gosh, like Blake, amazing guy. He seems awesome. I need to know him. Or they're just like, hey, I need to be a judge too now for this because they heard about how great this organization is and how I could, be a part of it. So how can they find you? How can they learn more about Hire Judge or anything?
Yep. So hiredjudge.com. That's hired with a D, judge.com. My email is blake@hiredjudge.com. That's how you can contact me personally. There's also like a contact us form on the website if you want to go through there. And if you want to sign up as a judge, go on there, click judge at the top left, and then we'll have a form where you can tell us about your experience and get registered as a judge. If you're looking to hire judges, we do have a sale going on right now that if you pre-order judges for next season, you save 15% on all judges for next year. That ends July 1st. And so recommend getting those orders in as soon as possible. July 1st, it'll go down to 10% off. And then for the month of July, it'll be 10% off. And then that goes away at the end of July.
Awesome.
So anyway, best way to contact me is blake@hiredjudge.com.
Awesome. I'm glad we were able to get that out. So hopefully if you need your judging needs fulfilled, feel free to hit up Blake. For other people who want to stay in the conversation as usual, you know how to get in contact with me. I'm the Forensics Guy on every single platform. You can email me, Instagram me, even MySpace me. I still don't technically have a MySpace, but I'm sure I have an old profile that exists. So if you need to send a message, do it. I might not check it though. All right. So I love this part because this will literally happen till the end of time because I have no idea how to end these episodes. So for now, I'm just going to say peace out.